Have you ever stopped to ask yourself why you're so tense all the time? Why every morning feels like a race you never signed up for, and every night feels like a review of everything you didn't get right? You scroll, you chase, you plan, but somehow it all still feels like a burden. If that sounds like you, then you're not alone. Millions are stuck in this exact loop. And the strange part is, they think that's just how life is supposed to be. But what if the reason life feels heavy is because you're taking it far too seriously? Alan Watts once said, "Man suffers only because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun." And while that might sound poetic or even dismissive at first, it holds a mirror up to something deeper. Because the truth is, most of us have forgotten how to play. We've forgotten how to laugh at ourselves, how to flow with change, how to stop clenching our fists and just breathe into the moment. Somewhere along the line, life stopped feeling like an adventure and started feeling like a performance review. And the irony? You might be doing everything right, setting goals, grinding through days, avoiding mistakes, yet feel like something essential is missing. That's because it is. In a world that tells you to hustle harder, stay productive, keep proving your worth, Alan Watts reminds us of something different, something wildly unpopular but deeply liberating. That the point of life might not be to win at all. It might just be to live, to feel, to be. Not as some self-help cliche, but as an invitation to drop the mask, stop gripping the wheels so tightly, and wake up to the truth hiding in plain sight. Because maybe, just maybe, the problem isn't the weight of the world. Maybe the problem is how seriously we think we're supposed to carry it. Let's unpack that. Let's talk about the game. Because whether you realize it or not, that's exactly what you're in. And the problem isn't that life is a game. The problem is that most people are playing without even knowing the rules, or worse, they think it's something else entirely. Alan Watts called life a dance, a play, a musical thing, not a task to be completed, not a ladder to climb, and definitely not a war to win. But society doesn't teach us that. Instead, we're handed scripts. Graduate, get a job, be successful, be important, don't mess up, always stay ahead. And without even realizing it, we start treating life like a checklist, not a song to enjoy while it's playing, but a race to the end of the track. But here's the catch. What happens at the end of the race? You die. That's the finish line. Which begs the question, why are we so obsessed with rushing to it? We've been fooled into thinking that arrival is the goal, that there's some final destination, some moment where everything clicks and we finally get to rest, to smile, to be enough. But that moment never comes, because every time you think you're close, the bar moves. A promotion leads to more pressure. A relationship leads to new insecurities. A win leads to the fear of losing it. And so the game becomes a grind. Watts pointed out that this is exactly where we go wrong. He said, "We thought of life by analogy with a journey, with a pilgrimage, which had a serious purpose at the end, but we missed the point the whole way along. It was a musical thing, and we were supposed to sing or dance while the music was being played." That hits hard, doesn't it? Think about it. Kids don't play tag to get somewhere. They play to play, but we grow up and suddenly play becomes pointless unless there's a prize. We stop dancing unless someone's watching. We stop singing unless we're being graded. But what if the point wasn't performance? What if the point was presence? What if you've spent all this time playing the wrong game, confusing it for something else, only to wake up one day and realize you were never meant to win. You were meant to feel. And that truth, that shift in perception, it has the power to break you out of everything you thought you had to be. So, if life really is a game or a dance, then who is this figure we all try to become? The one who's got it all together, who's always in control, always calculating the next move. Let's talk about the myth of the serious person. You've seen this person before. Maybe you've even tried to become them. They never smile too wide, never joke too much, and always appear focused, laser sharp. You hear people praise them. She's so disciplined. He's dead serious about his goals. They don't waste time. But here's the thing. What if that seriousness isn't a strength, but a mask? Alan Watts warned about this obsession with taking ourselves too seriously. He once said, "A person who thinks all the time has nothing to think about except thoughts, so he loses touch with reality and lives in a world of illusion." And that's exactly what happens. When we build our identity on being serious, we lose connection with spontaneity, joy, and flow. We turn into characters in a story we forgot how to rewrite. We start performing life rather than experiencing it. Now, this doesn't mean discipline or commitment are bad. It means that when seriousness becomes your default lens, you begin to resist the very things that make life feel alive: uncertainty, laughter, and the possibility of being surprised. Let me ask you this. Have you ever caught yourself suppressing laughter in a meeting, holding back a joke in case it ruins your image, avoiding joy just to stay composed? That's the serious person talking. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Nobody fully trusts the person who's always serious. Why? Because it doesn't feel human. It feels staged, heavy, closed off. Alan Watts believed that the most enlightened people often appear childlike, not childish, but light-hearted, playful, unafraid to laugh at themselves. Why? Because they understand the cosmic joke, that control is an illusion and that trying to look like you have it all together is just a clever form of fear. So here's the question I want to leave you with. What are you really afraid would happen if you stopped taking yourself so seriously? Would you crumble, or would you finally be free? Let's be honest, you already know that being uptight all the time doesn't feel good. You've probably told yourself, "I need to relax," or "I shouldn't stress so much." You've heard the quotes, you've nodded along to the ideas. And yet, when the pressure hits, deadlines, expectations, mistakes, you go right back into that serious mode. So if lightness is what we want, why is it so hard to live that way? This part is about the discomfort of dropping the act of seriousness and why we fear being seen as anything less than in control. The truth is, seriousness has become a kind of armor, a psychological costume we wear to be taken seriously by others, but also by ourselves. In most cultures today, seriousness signals competence. The person who laughs too much is seen as naive. The one who takes things lightly is often brushed off. You've probably felt that pressure to appear professional, put together, on top of things. But Alan Watts challenges this whole mindset. He reminds us that when you find out that there was never anything in the dark side to be afraid of, nothing is left but to laugh at the illusion. In other words, the seriousness we carry is often built on fears that were never real to begin with. Fears like, if I relax, I'll look lazy. If I laugh too much, no one will respect me. If I stop trying so hard, I'll fall behind. But here's the twist. The people we're most drawn to, the ones who seem magnetic, at ease, vibrant, they're rarely the most serious people in the room. They're the ones who carry a certain lightness. They're confident enough to not take themselves too seriously. So why don't we do the same? Because dropping the act feels vulnerable. It requires us to step outside the identity we've built around effort, image, and intensity, and that's scary. But ask yourself, what has that seriousness really brought you? Did it protect you from pain or just make joy harder to feel? We'll go even deeper in the next part because there's something hiding behind all of this, a truth so strange, so freeing, and so often ignored that Alan Watts called it the joke at the heart of the universe, and it changes everything. So let's talk about the joke. Because according to Alan Watts, at the center of all our seriousness, our striving, our stress, our need to appear composed, there's something wildly ironic and deeply freeing. He believed that when we really understand life, when we strip away all the mental noise and ego and overthinking, what we're left with is not a formula, it's a punchline. Watts once said, the whole universe is a cosmic play, Lila, as the Hindus call it, divine play. And the moment we forget that, we fall into the trap. We start believing that life is supposed to make perfect sense, that it's supposed to be fair, predictable, and morally tidy. But it's not. Look around. The world is full of contradictions. Brilliant minds go unnoticed. Kind people suffer. accidents happen, beauty pops up in the middle of chaos, and yet, instead of laughing at the absurdity, most of us try to force it into a neat little box. But life isn't a spreadsheet. It's more like a surreal improv show where nobody knows the script, but everyone's pretending they do. The real joke, you're in the audience and on the stage, and everyone's acting like they're not confused. Think about how we treat identity. We stress endlessly about finding ourselves as if there's a final perfect version of who we're supposed to be. But Watts flips this idea. He said, you are a function of what the whole universe is doing, in the same way that a wave is a function of the ocean. You're not separate from life. You are life. And yet, you try to control it, fix it, master it, without realizing that you are the thing you're trying to manage. That's like a wave trying to control the ocean. That's the joke. And when you finally get it, not just intellectually, but in your bones, it doesn't make you bitter. It makes you laugh. Not the shallow kind of laugh, but that deep, whole-body release. The kind that says, I don't have to keep pretending. So here's the question I'll leave hanging. What if laughter isn't a distraction from the truth, but the closest thing to understanding it? Let's pull back the curtain on one of the most damaging beliefs we carry, this constant, gnawing idea that you are a problem to be solved. It starts early. From the moment you're old enough to be aware of yourself, you're measured, corrected, compared. You're told who you should be, how you should act, what success looks like, and slowly this message takes root. You're not enough as you are. There's something wrong with you that needs fixing, improving, polishing. And so begins the self-improvement loop, the belief that happiness is always on the other side of better habits, better mindset, better results. And listen, growth is important, but here's the trap. When you approach growth from the belief that you're broken, you never arrive, because no matter how far you climb, your mind still whispers, not quite. Keep going. You're still not there. Alan Watts cuts right through this. He said, trying to improve yourself is like trying to lift yourself up by your own bootstraps. It can't be done. Because you can't fix what was never broken. The real shift happens when you stop seeing yourself as an object to be corrected and start seeing yourself as a living process, unfolding moment by moment, not a product, but a dance, not a destination, but a song being played. You're not behind schedule, you're not off track, you're not late to some mythical finish line. You're simply here, experiencing, learning, changing, just like everyone else. And the funny part? The very people you admire for their presence, their lightness, their clarity, they're often not finished either. They've just stopped trying so hard to be perfect. They've made peace with the mess. So let me ask you plainly, what if nothing's wrong with you? Not your pace, not your past, not even your confusion. What if your need to fix everything is the very thing keeping you from peace? We're almost at the heart of it now, because if you're not broken and life isn't a problem, then where does real freedom come from? That's what we're exploring now. The idea that freedom doesn't come from more control. It comes from deeper trust. This flips everything most of us have been taught. We're conditioned to believe that freedom means power. The power to manage, predict, direct every outcome. Control your career, control your relationships, control your future. And if you can control enough variables, you'll finally feel free, right? But it never works like that, because the more control you chase, the more trapped you feel. You start micromanaging your emotions, avoiding risks, overplanning every detail. Life shrinks into a box of what feels safe. But here's the irony, that kind of control doesn't create freedom, it creates fear. Alan Watts said it like this: the more we struggle for life as pleasure, the more we are actually killing what we love. In other words, the tighter you grip the moment, the more it slips through your fingers. Real freedom comes when you stop trying to force life to bend to your will, and instead you start trusting that you're not separate from it, that you're not here to outsmart the flow, but to move with it. Think about the times in your life when you felt most alive. Were you obsessing over the outcome, or were you lost in the moment, fully immersed, not trying to hold it down? The truth is, trust doesn't mean passivity. It doesn't mean giving up or drifting aimlessly. It means surrendering to participation. It means showing up fully, knowing you can't predict everything, but knowing you don't have to. So here's the question I'll leave you with. What would your life feel like if you stopped gripping the wheel and started dancing with the road instead? Everything we've talked about, seriousness, identity, control, the illusion of needing to be more, all of it leads here, to the truth that Alan Watts repeated in so many ways, but always with the same message underneath: you're already it. Not someday, not when you improve, not when you prove your worth, right now. But that's hard to accept, isn't it? We're used to striving. We think enlightenment has to be earned. That peace is at the end of a long road. That joy only comes after the struggle is finished. Yet Watts reminds us, you are the universe experiencing itself. That's not a metaphor. That's not spiritual fluff. That's a reminder that you're not a disconnected observer trying to fit into life. You are life. You're not here to become something. You're here to remember something. And that something is this: the weight you carry, the stress, the pressure, the constant performing. It was never yours to begin with. You took it on because the world told you it made you valuable, but it didn't. The truth that sets you free is the one that sounds almost too simple to believe. You don't need to take life so seriously to make it meaningful. In fact, meaning grows in the exact moments you let go, when you laugh, when you feel, when you forget to impress and simply exist. Because the people who are truly awake, they don't walk around with furrowed brows and tight shoulders. They dance through life, not because it's easy, but because they've stopped pretending they're in control. They've stopped trying to earn permission to be, and maybe that's your next step. So here's what I want to leave you with. What if today, just for a moment, you stop trying to matter and just let yourself be? Not serious, not perfect, just present. Because sometimes the deepest wisdom doesn't sound like an answer. It sounds like a sigh.